The war had burned across the galaxy for so long that most people forgot how it even began. Humans and the Varkathi Empire had fought without rest, destroying ships, shattering worlds, and breaking the hearts of millions on both sides. Every star system carried scars. Every soldier wore pain in their eyes. And yet, after all this destruction, no one truly felt victorious. No one felt safe. Everyone was tired. Commander Rian Holt, a human soldier with a simple uniform and a worn-out face, was tired more than most. He had seen friends fall during battles he never wanted. He had carried orders he did not believe in. He had survived things no human should survive. Yet even with all that, he held on to something the war had not stolen from him: hope. When the human leadership sent him as a peace ambassador, Rian accepted, not because he trusted the Varkathi, but because he believed someone had to end the endless bloodshed. Someone had to try, and so he traveled alone to the heart of the Varkathi Empire, a place known for deadly honor, strict warriors, and a queen feared across half the galaxy. Her name was Queen Saraxa, a towering ruler with natural armor plates running down her back, eyes like burning emeralds, and a presence that made even her strongest generals bow in silence. She had led armies into battle herself. Some called her a monster. Others called her a savior. Rian didn't know what to call her yet. He only knew one thing. He was entering the lion's den, unarmed and unprotected. The crystal throne room was larger than any hall Rian had ever seen. Tall glowing pillars surrounded him, humming with alien energy. The floor was polished like smooth black glass, reflecting the faces of guards who watched him with cold, unblinking eyes. Every step he took echoed across the room, announcing his presence long before he reached the throne. Queen Saraxa sat high above, observing him like a hawk watching a small prey animal. Her crown was a halo of sharp crystal spikes, glowing softly. Her armor was carved from the plates of ancient beasts, showing her strength and status. Beside her stood her daughter, Princess Vela, younger, slimmer, but still carrying the same intimidating presence. Rian knew. He looked fragile in comparison, small, human, soft-skinned, and breakable. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, but he did not let fear rule him. He walked forward with steady steps. When he finally reached the bottom of the throne, Rian did not kneel in fear. He bowed in respect. Not submission, not weakness, respect. It shocked the entire hall. Varkathi warriors whispered. Princess Vela blinked. Confused, even Queen Saraxa tilted her head slightly, for the first time in many years. She was curious. Rian lifted his head and looked straight into the queen's eyes. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but carried the weight of every fallen friend. "I come with a message," he said. Not a threat. Not an ultimatum. Only a hope for peace. The room fell into a heavy silence. Varkathi believed strength was the only true language. They expected humans to speak with fear or aggression. But Rian showed neither. He stood like a man who had nothing left to lose, yet everything left to fight for. The queen rose slowly from her throne, her steps heavy and commanding. She approached him until her towering shadow fell over his entire body. She could have crushed him with a single hand. She could have ended his life in the blink of an eye. But he did not step back. This surprised her even more. She looked down at him with curiosity. Danger, and something else, something unspoken. "You come alone," she said, her voice deep like a distant storm. "No guards. No weapons. No armor. Why?" Rian took a breath. "Because peace needs courage," he answered. Someone had to show it first. Those words hit her harder than any weapon. The generals frowned. The guards exchanged uncertain glances. Princess Vela leaned forward slightly, her expression softening for a brief second. Queen Saraxa stared at him in silence, studying every line in his worn face, every scar across his skin, every truth hidden in his tired eyes. She had met countless warriors, politicians, liars, and cowards. But this human was different, fragile, yet unbroken, afraid, yet brave enough to step forward. Small, yet carrying a heart fierce as fire. And for the first time, the mighty queen felt something she had not felt in years. Astonishment. The story of peace of worlds changing began with that single moment. Humans standing unarmed before a throne of crystal, refusing to bow in fear, but offering something stronger. Hope. After that first meeting, the crystal throne room became a place of quiet tension. Commander Rian Holt did not leave. He stayed at the palace as a guest of the queen, a human among alien warriors who had never welcomed outsiders before. His presence alone caused whispers to spread among the guards and generals. "Why does she allow him here?" they asked. "Why does he not fear her?" Rian's days began with meetings and council sessions. The Queen's generals sat across from him, their sharp eyes calculating, their long claws tapping the table impatiently. They tried to test him, to find weakness in his speech, hesitation in his stance. They expected him to bow, to lie, to falter. He did none of these things. Instead, Rian listened. He spoke calmly, honestly, and without arrogance. He admitted human mistakes. He explained human hopes. He asked questions, not commands. He treated everyone in that room with respect, even those who hated his species. Queen Syraxa watched him silently from her throne. She had seen thousands of diplomats, thousands of generals, thousands of leaders. Most arrived with threats or arrogance. Most left broken or humiliated. But this human, he had neither pride nor fear. He carried himself like someone who had been tested in fire and survived. Princess Vela, the Queen's daughter, was harder to notice at first. She observed quietly, standing beside the tall crystal pillars, her sharp eyes following every gesture of the human. She had grown up in the shadow of war, trained to wield weapons as easily as she breathed. She was supposed to see humans as enemies, weak and fragile. But something about Rian made her pause. He was soft in body, yes, but his heart radiated a strength she did not expect. Days passed. Weeks passed. And with every conversation, every meeting, the Queen found herself thinking about him more than she wanted to. Not as an enemy, not as a tool, but as something extraordinary. One evening, Rian walked through the palace gardens. The glowing crystals bathed the world in soft light, reflecting in pools of water. Vela followed him quietly. She did not speak at first, only watched as he knelt to study the alien flowers that grew in precise geometric patterns. He touched each one gently, as if afraid to hurt it, and for some reason, it made her chest tighten. "You have a strange way of seeing the world," she said finally. Her voice was soft, almost unrecognizable in its curiosity. Rian turned to her and smiled gently. "I've learned that the smallest things are often the most important," he said. "Life, peace, even trust. They are small, but they hold everything." Vela nodded slowly, her mind spinning. She had been taught that humans were weak. She had been taught that peace was an illusion. And yet, here stood one human who held the power to change everything, not with weapons, not with intimidation, but with courage and honesty. The next day, Queen Syraxa called a grand council. Her generals were ready to hear her words, expecting a typical political announcement: new laws, stricter rules, or perhaps a challenge to the human presence. Instead, the Queen surprised them all. She rose from her throne, her voice echoing through the crystal hall. "Commander Rian Holt," she began. Every eye turned to him, and every whisper died in the tense air. "For your courage, your honesty, and your unbroken spirit, I offer a bond. Not of duty, not of fear, but of honor." The hall went silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. "I offer you my daughter's hand," she said, her words clear and sharp. Rian froze. His chest tightened. Vela's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. The generals nearly stumbled in disbelief. No one refused a royal marriage in Varkathi history. No one questioned the Queen's will. And yet, here was the offer. Queen Syraxa looked at him intently, waiting for the expected response of awe or fear, perhaps a bowed head or a whispered thanks. She was ready to celebrate the alliance that would unite humans and Varkathi forever. But Rian's eyes did not widen in amazement. His jaw did not tighten in anxiety. Instead, he simply looked down for a long moment, thinking, and then he shook his head slowly. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I am honored beyond words. I cannot refuse such generosity. But I cannot accept your daughter as a gift. She deserves a choice of her own. She deserves someone she loves, not someone chosen by duty or politics. And I am only a soldier." A silence heavier than the first meeting fell over the hall. The general's claws tapped nervously on the crystal floor. The guards stiffened, unsure whether to act. Even Vela's hand trembled slightly at her side. She had never heard such words. A human refusing a queen. Calmly, without insult, without fear. Queen Syraxa felt her chest tighten. A strange feeling came over her, astonishment, yes, but also admiration. Most humans would kneel. Most humans would beg. Most humans would be afraid. But Rian? He had stood on his own terms. He had honored her, refused her offer, and yet had not disrespected her. For the first time in many years, she found herself uncertain. And that uncertainty was terrifying. The silence in the crystal throne room was deafening. Commander Rian words lingered like a sharp wind cutting through the tension. No one spoke. No one breathed. The general stared, jaws tight, eyes wide, unsure whether to be angry or confused. Even the guards, trained to obey the queen without question, hesitated. This had never happened before. A human had refused a Varkathi queen's offer. And he had done it without fear. Princess Vela stood frozen, her mind spinning. Her mother's offer had been more than political. It had been the ultimate test of loyalty and power, a symbol meant to unite two worlds. And Rian had refused. Not with anger. Not with disrespect. But calmly, quietly, firmly, Vela felt something stir inside her chest, something she could not name: relief, pride, curiosity, and perhaps admiration. She had been trained to see humans as fragile, weak, incapable of courage. Yet this one human stood before her with eyes steady, voice calm, and heart brave. Queen Syrax's emerald eyes narrowed slightly. She had faced rebellion, treachery, and betrayal countless times. She had seen rulers fall, soldiers break, and alliances crumble. And yet, Rian's words were different. There was no trick, no hidden threat, no lie. Just truth and courage and refusal. She studied him carefully. Most humans begged for mercy. Most humans flattered and flinched. Most humans bent to power they could never match. But Rian Holt, he held his own. Not out of arrogance. Not out of ignorance. Out of something stronger. A strength that came from knowing who he was, what he believed, and what he would not compromise. The generals whispered among themselves. "This is impossible," one muttered. "He cannot refuse the queen." "I have never seen this before," another said. "And I have served the empire for 3 decades. Queen Syrax's lips curved slightly, not a smile, but a momentary softness that vanished as quickly as it appeared. She was not used to uncertainty. She was used to control. And yet, the control she had always relied on seemed to falter in the presence of this human. Rian stepped forward slightly, sensing the tension, yet never bowing further than the respect he had already shown. "Your Majesty," he said, "my refusal does not come from disrespect. I honor you and your daughter more than I can express. But a bond one as sacred as this cannot be given for politics alone. It must come from choice, from heart, from understanding." Vela's fingers curled at her side. The words were simple, but they carried weight that shook her. He saw her not as a prize. He saw her as a person. He saw her life, her freedom, her heart. For the first time, Vela realized that she had never been offered a choice before. Everything in her life had been decided by duty, training, and expectation. Her mother had shaped her for the empire, for power, for survival. But no one had ever asked her what she truly wanted. Rian had. That realization hit Vela harder than any sword could. Her chest tightened. Her heart raced. She had always admired warriors who fought with strength and courage. But this human, he fought differently. He fought for life, for freedom, for respect. And somehow he had already won a place in her heart she had not expected. Queen Syrax's expression hardened, then softened, then hardened again. She was a ruler who had crushed entire armies. She had stared death in the face countless times. And yet, this one human terrified her. Not because he could harm her. Not because he could betray her. But because he challenged her understanding of power. He challenged her rules. He challenged her assumptions. "Most humans would bow," she said finally, her voice low and measured. "Most humans would beg. Most humans would accept whatever we offered. Why do you refuse, human?" Rian looked directly at her, his eyes calm, steady, filled with quiet fire. "Because the greatest honor cannot be given. It must be chosen. And your daughter deserves that choice. Not politics. Not duty. Choice." The generals gasped softly. Guards shifted uneasily. And Vela felt her world shift. She realized that for the first time, someone had truly seen her, not as a princess, not as a symbol, not as a political tool, but as a human, as a person, as someone capable of feeling and choosing. Queen Syraxa studied Rian for a long, heavy moment. The silence stretched, echoing off the crystal walls. Finally, she inclined her head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. "Then you refuse," she said, almost to herself. "And yet, I find myself intrigued." Vela blinked. The queen's tone was strange, dangerous, yes, but also curious. For the first time, Vela sensed that her mother did not know exactly how to react. And that uncertainty, was rare. Rian did not flinch. He stood firm, not because he wanted to defy the queen, but because he believed in something far greater than fear: honor, choice, and courage. And in that moment, the first fragile bridge between human and Varkathi began to form, not through power, not through fear, but through the simple truth that even the smallest, weakest-looking human could be stronger than empires. Princess Vela's heart beat faster. She did not yet understand the storm that had begun in her life, but she knew one thing clearly: this human was extraordinary. And somehow, she already cared more about him than she dared to admit. The days of calm in the Crystal Palace were short-lived. Whispers of rebellion had grown louder in the outer colonies of the Varkathi Empire. Some generals and soldiers could not accept peace with humans. They saw Commander Rian Holt not as a messenger, but as a threat. They believed that no human could ever be trusted, that the queen had betrayed her own kind by allowing one into her palace. Queen Saraxa had prepared her guards. Yet even she did not expect how quickly the rebellion would strike. It began in the middle of the night. The palace, usually quiet under the soft glow of the crystal pillars, erupted in chaos. Explosions shook the walls. Alarms screamed like angry beasts. Screams echoed in the marble halls. Guards ran toward the danger, but the rebels were clever, precise, and ruthless. They moved through secret passages, striking from shadows with weapons designed to kill quickly. Rian had been asleep in his modest quarters, still adjusting to the alien palace's strange rhythms. He awoke to a sharp vibration under his feet and the screams of Varkathi soldiers. Without thinking, he grabbed a small energy sidearm the queen had reluctantly allowed him for protection and ran toward the source of the commotion. By the time he reached the throne room, chaos had consumed everything. Smoke hung in the air, glowing in red from the fire burning nearby. The queen's guards fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered, and the rebels were determined. Princess Vela appeared at the end of a long hallway, cornered by two rebels with cruel grins. Her hands, trained for combat, moved quickly, summoning energy blades and striking with deadly precision. But even she was outmatched by the surprise attack. Rian saw her from the other side of the hall, his heart pounding. Without hesitation, he ran forward, his human body small and fragile compared to the towering aliens around him. But he did not falter. He threw himself between Vela and the blade of one of the rebels. Pain exploded in his side as metal pierced his armor. He grunted but stayed upright, blocking another strike with his body. Vela's eyes widened. Shock, fear, and fury combined as she realized the human she had watched and judged as fragile was now protecting her life with no thought of his own. He did not have the strength of a Varkathi, but he had courage that dwarfed the bravest warriors she had ever known. "Rian!" she shouted, her voice breaking. She surged forward, swinging her blades with deadly accuracy, cutting down the rebels around him. But she kept glancing at him, afraid of the small human she had come to care about being injured further. Rian staggered, but did not fall. He pushed Vela back gently. "Get to safety," he yelled, blood staining his uniform. "I can't let them reach you." For the first time, Vela's heart betrayed her training. She had been taught to fight first, think later. She had been trained to be a warrior above all else. But now, as she watched the human bleed, struggling against enemies much stronger than him, she realized something deep and frightening. She cared about him. More than she could admit. More than she had ever felt for anyone. Rian's determination shone through the pain. He dodged another attack, grabbed a fallen weapon, and used every ounce of human cunning to defend them both. Despite the odds, he kept Vela safe, moving her behind walls, shielding her from harm. Queen Saraxa arrived shortly after, her own energy blades cutting through the rebels with deadly precision. She was furious not at the humans, but at her people who had dared to attack peace. Her eyes found Rian, slumped but unbroken, fighting to protect her daughter. And for the first time, she understood that the human she had feared for so long could possess a strength no Varkathi could match. When the battle ended, the rebels were defeated, retreating into shadows from which they had come. The palace was damaged, fires smoldered, and the air was thick with smoke and tension. Rian sat heavily against the wall, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his fingers, but his eyes were bright, alive. He had protected the princess, and nothing else mattered. Vela ran to him, dropping to her knees beside him. Her armored hands shook as she pressed against his wound, desperate to stop the bleeding. "Rian, you could have died," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. Rian gave a small, pained smile. "I'm fine," he said softly. "I had to make sure you were safe." Vela's chest tightened, and tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, she understood that courage was not measured by size or strength alone. It was measured by heart, by sacrifice, and by love for others. Queen Syraxa, standing a few steps away, watched silently. She had offered her daughter's hand as a political gesture, thinking strength and duty would guide their union. But she had never expected to see a human fight with such selflessness, risking life and limb to save a Varkathi princess. For the second time, the queen was astonished, and for the first time, Princess Vela realized that her heart had already chosen. Even before her mind could comprehend it, the palace was quiet now. But the echoes of the attack lingered in every hallway. Smoke still curled from the burnt crystal panels, and the scent of scorched metal hung in the air. Commander Rian Holt lay on a medical bed in the palace infirmary, his uniform stained with blood and sweat. His breathing was heavy but steady, a testament to his resilience. The wound on his side had been patched, but his body ached, and his muscles burned from the strain of the fight. Princess Vela never left his side. She sat beside him, armored hands carefully holding his own, her green eyes wide with worry and admiration. She had fought alongside him during the attack, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of him now, vulnerable and human, yet unbroken. "Rian," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "You shouldn't have. You didn't have to." Rian smiled faintly, wincing as he shifted his weight. "I had to," he said softly. "You're important. Your people are important. Peace. It's important." Vela shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "I've never seen anyone like you. You risked yourself for me. For all of us. And you never thought about what might happen to you." Rian's gaze softened. "I did think about it. Every second. But if I hadn't acted, you might not be here. And I couldn't live with that." Word of Rian's bravery spread quickly through the palace, reaching even the highest chambers. Queen Syraxa summoned him to her private audience. She entered the room, her steps deliberate, her expression unreadable. The air seemed to hum with the tension of her presence. "You endangered yourself for my daughter," she said, her voice low and controlled. "Why?" Rian looked at her, meeting her emerald eyes without hesitation. "Because she matters. She's brave. She's strong. And she deserves to live freely, without fear from anyone, including her own people." Queen Syraxa's hands clenched at her sides. Fury rose within her, tempered by a strange mixture of awe and confusion. No human had ever spoken to her with such honesty. No human had ever dared to challenge the Empire's expectations, let alone protect a princess in such a reckless, selfless way. "You are a human," she said, her voice tight. "Weak, fragile, a creature that should have been crushed long ago in war. And yet, you have strength I have not seen in centuries. You fight for more than survival. You fight for honor, for others, for heart. Why?" Rian's lips curled into a small, tired smile. "Because strength isn't only measured by what you can destroy. True strength comes from what you protect, what you fight for without thinking of yourself." The queen's eyes narrowed. She had led armies, crushed rebellions, and ruled her empire with iron will. She had believed strength was measured in power, fear, and dominance. But Rian, he showed her a different kind of strength. A strength that did not demand obedience. A strength that inspired respect. A strength that moved hearts. Vela stepped forward, her hand still on his arm. "Mother," she said softly, "he saved my life. He saved the palace. And he never asked for anything in return. He is different. He sees us, not just our titles or our duties. He sees me. As a person." Queen Syraxa studied her daughter, then the human lying before her. Her mind raced. This was not a political alliance, not a soldier's obligation. This was something unfamiliar and powerful. Something that stirred emotions she had long buried beneath duty and pride. For the first time, she felt a strange mixture of admiration, astonishment, and perhaps respect. Humans were not supposed to be this way. Fragile creatures with fleeting lifespans, yet they carried hearts capable of unimaginable courage. Rian Holt had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten, that even the smallest being could leave an impact far greater than the mightiest warrior. She took a step closer, her voice softening. "Perhaps your people were never truly our enemies. Perhaps it was we who did not understand you." Rian's eyes lifted, meeting hers. He did not speak of victory or war or politics. He only spoke the truth of his heart. "We are not enemies. We can choose to be more than that. We can choose peace, if we are brave enough to try. Queen Syraxa remained silent for a long moment, letting the words sink in. The fire of anger had not completely vanished, but it had softened, replaced by something rarer, a willingness to see beyond her own power. She had underestimated humans, and in doing so, she had discovered a force stronger than fear, stronger than war, courage born from heart and conviction. Vela looked at Rian, her eyes shining. She realized that her feelings were no longer simply admiration or curiosity. They were something deeper: respect, trust, and a quiet love born in the midst of chaos and danger. Rian squeezed her hand weakly, his smile gentle despite the pain. "We'll get through this," he said. "Together." Queen Syraxa turned away, her mind racing. She had offered her daughter's hand as a political act, expecting compliance, duty, and alliance. Instead, she had witnessed bravery, sacrifice, and the undeniable truth that humans could inspire loyalty, trust, and even love in ways Varkathi warriors could not. For the first time in generations, the Queen wondered if perhaps the galaxy's future did not belong to strength alone, but to courage, compassion, and the hearts of those willing to risk everything for the lives of others. And Rian Holt, the human who bowed to no throne, had just reminded her of that truth. The palace gardens glowed softly under the light of the giant crystal pillars. Pools of water reflected the gentle luminescence, creating a world of floating stars and quiet beauty. Commander Rian Holt walked slowly through the gardens, still recovering from his wound, every step careful but steady. His thoughts were heavy with the events of the past days, the battle, the rebellion, the Queen's astonishment at his courage. Yet his mind kept returning to one thing: Princess Vela. Vela followed him silently, her armored footsteps soft against the smooth ground. She had spent the last hours pacing in her chambers, wrestling with emotions she had never expected to feel. She had admired him, yes. She had respected him, yes. But now, as she watched him move through the garden, the depth of her feelings startled her. Her heart raced, her chest ached, and for the first time in her life, she realized that she wanted something not dictated by duty, honor, or expectation. She wanted him. Finally, she spoke, her voice breaking the silence. "Rian." He turned to her, eyes soft, gentle, and aware. "Vela," he said quietly, smiling faintly. The smile made her stomach twist. Even in pain, he carried calm strength, a presence that made the chaos of the last days fade away. They walked together to a small crystal bridge over a pool, the water reflecting their faces like twin moons. Vela hesitated, her armored hands twisting together nervously. I've been thinking," she said, "about what happened during the attack. About you, about me, about everything." Rian tilted his head slightly, and he prompted gently, his voice patient, giving her the space to speak. Her eyes met his, glowing with emotion. "When my mother offered my hand, I thought it was a duty, a political act, something I had to accept. But when you refused her offer, I felt relief and fear. Relief because I realized that maybe I could choose, and fear because I realized I wanted that choice to be mine. And now, I know that I choose you." Rian's heart skipped. For a moment, he could not speak. His chest tightened with emotion, the weight of her words settling like warm sunlight. The human world had taught him to fight, to survive, to protect. But nothing had prepared him for this moment, the moment a warrior princess, the daughter of a queen, confessed that she wanted him, that she had chosen him. He stepped closer, careful not to hurt her in his weakened state, and took her hands in his. "Vela, if this is truly your choice, then I will not refuse you. Never again." His voice was firm, tender, and steady, carrying all the promise of loyalty, courage, and heart he had shown in battle. Vela's breath hitched. Her hands trembled in his, but she did not pull away. "You risked your life for me," she whispered. "And now, I realize I would risk everything for you. I never thought I could feel this way, but I do." The garden seemed to hold its breath. The glowing crystals reflected their faces, their emotions, the unspoken promises, and the warmth of hearts finally aligned. Rian squeezed her hands gently, a silent vow that he would always protect her, not out of duty, but because she mattered to him. For the first time, Vela smiled freely. No training, no expectation, no royal obligation dictated this moment. It was theirs, born from trust, courage, and the quiet understanding that two very different beings could find common ground in the heart. Rian stepped back slightly, looking into her eyes, seeing the strength and determination that matched his own, yet softened by vulnerability and trust. "Vela," he said softly, We are different in every way. You are a warrior, a princess, strong beyond measure. And I am only human. But together, I think we can be stronger than either of us alone. We can face anything, rebellion, fear, even the weight of two empires, if we stand together." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes, the emotions too deep for words alone.